So a lawyer and a financial advisor walk into a bar.
And then what happens, Dave?
Well, the question then comes, what does it look like post-pandemic for business owners?
Post-pandemic, that's the catchword. I'm not sure what that even means. What does that mean? Are we post-pandemic? Is the pandemic over?
Well, see, that's an interesting question, isn't it? Because for some people, it's not. We're not past it. We're right in the thick of it. It's just that we're not so focused on it as we used to be.
Yeah, I tell you, for me, one thing that I feel like I've now had is I've had some difficult times. I've had a real personal and business struggles, really up until the pandemic came along. I think a lot of people, particularly maybe my age range, it's just been
35.
Unfettered good times. You know what I mean? That my career's sort of just gone from strength to strength. The business, when I started the business, it really grew quite rapidly, and it's really continued to kind of get stronger. And I know when the pandemic sort of first hit, when lockdowns were being contemplated and we realised it was a big deal, I sort of panicked. I remember I went home from work that day and said, I'm going to have to do some planning, because I think, we're going to have to lay people off. What's this going to look like? People, I thought it was the end of the world. I thought our clients are not going to want to spend money on lawyers. They're going to be just trying to, pay their mortgage or whatever, because at the time we were thinking property prices were going to drop and it was all going to be very bad. So I think probably the thing that I've experienced kind of emotionally and practically has been I've been through a crisis.
Yeah, I agree. I think I don't disagree. It was, in a lot of respects, hanging on by the seat of your pants. Like it was just every day was changing.
Yeah,
circumstances are hard. Yeah. Just that whole dynamic around if you could function your business in an online environment, like for you and I, we're both in professional services.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time at home.
Yeah.
Which, had its challenges but also had its benefits.
Yeah.
But now if you were in a business that was people were out on site the whole time, that mightn't have changed, but it was the movement that people had and the fear of, well, what would happen if so-and-so? And you still see it. I was talking to someone the other day about it, and they said they just kind of forget about it sometimes, and all of a sudden they see someone with a mask on.
Oh, yeah, and they go, hang on. Oh, yeah. That's right.
Hang on. Well, what are we doing there? Or there's there might be a pre-recorded television lifestyle program or something, or some interview from a while ago, and people, there's a lot of people walking around or serving with a mask on.
Yeah.
Whereas now that's kind of not. Yeah. And I just think there's an element where, there are definitely people that are scarred.
Yeah. Well, for a period in Melbourne, for the listeners in Melbourne, and I'm in Melbourne and Dave's in Melbourne as well, there was a curfew, curfew, I mean, you virtually think, are there going to be tanks rolling along the street? There's a curfew, right? We're not allowed out after dark. I remember being out somewhere and thinking, I've got to get home because I've got to get home before the curfew comes along. Because if I'm driving along after curfew, I might be arrested.
Well, that's what it was. You were fined. If you were caught out on curfew and you did not have a work permit to be out on the road after 9:30, you could have been fined.
Yeah, I mean, holy moly! So I can see why people, obviously you're scarred from. There's the pandemic. There's people dying in nursing homes, and there's all sorts of awful stuff happening. And awful. But then just in the terms of the response to the pandemic, whatever you think about that, it was a big change for everybody and a rapid change. And I think it's quite amazing how quickly we've almost forgotten about it. It's like we've gone into a post-traumatic stress, and you sort of just put it aside and say, well, it's all over now. So
it's like, bugger it, let's just get on with it.
yeah, that's right. If you get COVID, it'll be all right.
But again, I think what are the sort of, from a post-pandemic life for business owners? What does it look like?
Yeah,
I do. I think it's I think it's going to be a really hard one. And what lessons have we learned? Through that period. I think the big one is that people can function, and there's an element of trust with your team.
Yep.
And you've got to be able to have those measurements to sort of determine. I've asked them to do a particular job.
Yeah.
And therefore, if the output's there.
Yeah.
What's the problem? I'm getting the work done. Do I need to be travelling in and out of the office to then sit at a desk that I could be doing?
It's a flexible working. I can tell you I'm certainly in that camp. I was sort of old-fashioned. I thought if you worked from home for a day, that was because you were sitting on the couch watching Days of Our Lives, or looking after a kid, or looking after a parent, or doing something. Maybe that's a good thing to be doing, but it's not work. Yeah. That was my view, and maybe you jumped on and sent a couple of emails over the day. But I thought people who work from home were slacking off. Right? That was my view, and it's not a very popular view now. But I eat humble pie, and I recognise I was wrong about that, because my team all worked from home, and they did better than they'd ever done before. Our output was up, not down, and we can measure that output because it's a time based. Most of our stuff is time based, so we record time, so you can see how long people spent on things, and you can see what their output is. And funnily enough, actually, once they were working from home, I was more focused on their output and the measures of their output than I was when they're in the office. And I probably should have been focused on their output the whole time, but you sort of see them now. You're working with them on something. You know they're working. I
think that's your point, where you turn around and say, well, if everyone's in the office, I'm just assuming that if they're in the office, they're working.
Yeah.
And I don't think that that's always the case, because some people get really distracted quite easily.
Yeah.
They're sort of, I better go, some smokers or coffee drinkers or whatever it is.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, they're up and down lifts or walking around here and doing this, or getting distracted because someone rings, or they listen in on some other phone call or office discussion. It's like, no, stay focused on what you're meant to be doing.
Yeah,
so
come up to your desk. They do the come up to your desk and stand behind you and talk to you, and you're typing away, and you sort of feel like you have to talk to them, because you can't send them away. You know what I mean? You can't, unless you shut your door, or maybe it's an open plan, whatever it is. We used to work in an open plan office, so someone could just come up and start talking to you, and there's nothing you could do. So you get distracted. But at home, that doesn't happen, and at home you don't have the travel time, so there's more time overall in your day, whether you dedicate that to your home or to your work or to exercise or something. All of those are good things, and so there's more time to do good things, not sit in traffic on the way.
But see, the thing with that distraction when you're in the office, there was an interesting one I was reading about, that say you're in the open plan situation and everyone's got their little cubicles, just to, you got to have a desk and everything else, and this person would have, I don't know, I can't remember whether it was a flag or a cup or something that they put on the top of their...
Which meant bugger off.
Yeah, which said, I'm in the zone.
Right, yeah,
don't just walk up to me and ask me a question. It's like, no, I'm in the zone. And you see people, they may want to do stuff and they'll have headphones in, but they may not have anything playing in the headphones. They're just doing that to block out the noise around them. Yeah. So people also know, don't come up and talk to me when I've got the headphones in, because I'm trying to concentrate on something.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's very much dependent on the type of work you do, the industry. We've got transport trucking clients who, life didn't change at all. They're all out. I have to be on site driving trucks around or whatever, and that's fine. And then there's hospo workers or whatever who still have to serve coffees. None of that changed. But for a lot of office workers like us, and the elements of some of those businesses still have office staff, the life's changed a lot and can change a lot. It's really opened my mind to to how practical and effective flexible working can be, and how virtually everyone now wants to work, who are office workers, wants to work in some kind of hybrid, whether that's mostly at the office or mostly at home. And certainly, I set up my home office better than my work office ever was set up, and I can now shut the door and do kind of much more focused work and get a lot. I can start earlier because I don't have the commute. Start early and get a whole day's work done by sort of 10 o'clock. And then I can be available to clients to chat, on
or to get on a podcast and just
get on a podcast.
Quality. Get all this extra time. It's all the preparation that you've done leading into these.
Yeah, exactly. I can just so it's been really good for me, and it's something I think I'd take well out of beyond the days of COVID, that we'll continue to hybrid work and flexible work, because it just works for all the team.
But do you reckon, so in that, not that you're old, but you've had a period of your career, having come out of university, worked in a couple of different places and incorporated within, an office or a legal practice environment to listen and learn. Do you think the younger generation that might have come out of, straight out of university and working in certain places, I'd be just interesting to see how that changes over time, because so much stuff is learned just by being I mean, it's like an apprenticeship. You know, sometimes you can be, you can study all this stuff at university and you can get someone to turn up and you go, you know what, everything you learn at university, let's just push that to the side. Now you're in the work environment. Let's go do some stuff. And sometimes I think that would be difficult for certain personality types.
Right.
Because sometimes it's just one-dimensional. They've only ever heard from either their parents or their teachers or their, university lecturers and not a different perspective when they're out in the commercial world around how should I look at this differently. So I think some of the younger ones are not going to be as match fit for a bit of the...
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. I think that there is a big issue, and a lot of my colleagues have said that to me. But some people, like, managing partners of law firms have said to me, it's everyone back in the office 5 days a week because we don't want the young ones to suffer, right? And I hear that. But I go, well, hang on, all of the benefits of hybrid and flexible working out the door because we're worried about this one particular issue. And I say, well, you've got to weigh up any decision. You've got to weigh up the pros and the cons in totality, right? Yeah, and I do think there is some of that kind of osmosis learning you lose. And we, in fact, had someone who was a first-year lawyer, just like a trainee, if you like, excuse me, and the trainee during COVID, and they had to go home and start working from home. And I think she struggled. I think it was, and I felt for her. It was the beginning of her legal career, and she was all keen to get involved and whatever. And suddenly wasn't allowed to go to any meetings, and was only able to go to a Zoom meeting, which is not quite the same. Yep. So I think it probably impacted it. But I think two things I'd say about that. One is there's things you can do. You can open Teams chats and have more Teams meetings. You can have face-to-face meetings as well. You don't have to. I mean, often I was at a big law firm, right? And often the partner was down in the corner office with his door shut. I wasn't learning anything from osmosis from him anyway. You know what I mean? So you can forget.
Didn't you just sort of feel it as he walks past and said,
well, I felt a little
go get coffee.
I felt if I open the door, he might yell at me, So I mean, it's not all happy osmosis. And the other, so there's things you can do, and the other thing is, I think you've got to make a whole decision. You've got to decide what's best for everyone, in all the circumstances. So, in that case, you could work 3 days a week from the office, or you could have the teams, meet, each team and their supervisors meet together in person or whatever.
Yeah. I've also heard from some people saying because they're not living at home, they finish university, they might have had a couple of years of work and they're moving on. Yeah. And all of a sudden, they live out of home. They're like, but I don't, from a social point of view, I don't want to work, 2 or 3 days a week from home. I kind of like coming into the office or to the business or to whatever it might be to do certain things. And I think that's something definitely that the employer and the employee both need to recognise an element of flexibility and adaptability. Yeah, well, and it's kind of that communication that sort of says, look, there's no issue, we can do this, but, for some people they choose to come in 4 days a week and 1 day a week. Yeah. And I do think that some of the senior people have got to accept the fact that some people can function exceptionally well in that sort of work and when they come in. But the challenge is also when you get some businesses, it's not a blanket rule on certain things that you have, 3 people of 5 are in the office and 2 are at home. It's like, but then all of a sudden we might as well have all been at home. Because to bring them into the discussion...
Yeah, I think sometimes it's unfair on managers because suddenly managers are supposed they've got to manage their workflow, they've got to manage their actual work, their team, everything, and they've also got to manage who's where and when, and so-and-so's got to pick up the kids from whatever, so they're working from home for half a day and so-and-so's, and it all can become, I think, just unruly for the manager, and they just go, okay, well, look, it's everyone's 3 days a week, and the days are Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and that's that. I can understand the attraction to that. I think ideally we would all have arrangements flexibly that worked for us and our managers. Yeah. I think maybe that's asking a bit much sometimes. Depends on how many people you got and all of that. But I could see, you want to know where everyone is. If you ring them or you go to their desk, you want to know if they're supposed to be there or if they're supposed to be at home.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you look at that. There's that. I think it's the Specsavers ads on television where the girl's down at the beach and all of a sudden she quickly whips on her glasses and sits there with the puts her phone up and has the background, and all of a sudden the seagull comes into it.
Yeah.
I've been at it all morning. It's like I'm just lying at the beach.
Yeah.
I think that feeds.
I think there'll be a bit of that, and especially you've got a large workforce and whatever, and you're not sure whether someone's supposed to be working from home or not. There'll be people who take the piss, but there was probably people who take the piss, coming to the office every day.
I agree.
The jacket, the old thing, I think, is you leave your jacket on the back of your desk. That's what they did at law firms, and then you piss off for a while, and everyone thinks you're, at the toilet or whatever because your jacket's still there.
Yeah.
So that's Anyway, there's always going to be that kind of rubbish. But I think that one of the interesting questions that's come out of work from home and the tough times of the post-pandemic world, which is the topic for today, is the kind of looking at your life and your work goals more carefully and saying, well, hang on, what do I want to commute to work? Do I want to live close to work? Do I want to work from home? Do I want to work less and have maybe less money? Do I want to live by the beach and not take that promotion or whatever it is? I think people have really a much more, rather than just kind of get your 9-to-5 job and, get your couple of promotions
grind
and
away
at 65, grind away. Yeah, that's right. I think people are a little more, and maybe that's a generational thing too. People are more kind of alert to, well, what do I want my life to look like? And this is one of the themes in our podcast generally. What do I want my life to look like, and how do I make my business, because I usually, most of our listeners are business owners, how do I make my business suit my life, not the other way around? How do I don't want to be a slave to my business. And I think COVID and the post-pandemic world has shown us that that you don't have to be a slave to your business, or there's aspects of things like say, for instance, the going into work. I thought that was just part of being a lawyer, was going into the law firm. And it turns out you can actually do it from home largely if you want. It's kind of opened people's eyes, I think, to a new...
But I also don't think that that's generational. I think that... I think there's also a generation that sits there that there's multiple generations. You've probably got some of the mid-50s and above. It's like, okay, I've challenged. The kids are a bit older, but, they weren't at primary school. They might have been at university, and they're like, actually, it's not bad. If I can get myself set up, I could actually, take a holiday or go away for a month and do 2 or 3 days work in that month, but still, be away from the office, but know what's really kind of going on. It's like, so I can continue to, stay engaged with it's either my business or one of my key people inside a business. They can still be engaged and go away and do some stuff and have some experiences, but still keep connected.
Yeah.
Or there's that slightly younger generation that might have very young kids. And again, it's this flex where we're starting to look at paternity leave and what does that look like. And it's not just the females that are taking the leave. Males are starting to do it. People want to do certain things with their families, and that happens. But then there's also that generation that is straight out of university. To them, this idea of a hybrid work environment is not, to them, that has just been the norm.
Yeah.
They'll be like, well, why do I need to? Like, I think that the powers to be have to then say to that generation, it's important why you've got to be in the office every day, or you've got to do certain things, where they say, but they're happy to challenge the owners and the management on some of this stuff and go, but why? If I get the job done and you giving me what the requirements are, why do I need to be somewhere at a certain time and to be seen to be, if you've got a job and you say it's a 40-hour week, roughly, 38-hour week, if I can do that in 4 days, does that work? Do I need to be in? I mean, because there's always been people would just turn up to the office and go, oh, well, I'm here, like you said before. I'll just pop my jacket on the back of the chair and people still think it's like, get in the door before the boss is, and the minute they walk out the door, you can then, I just think that whole mindset has kind of changed, and I think that is something that will continue to evolve for business owners. How do we attract people to our organisation that might think outside the box a little bit differently about getting the work done?
Well, can I say something about that? That's actually enshrined now in the workplace law. The workplace law, as a result of the post-pandemic, or the pandemic, has now requires people to, employees and employers to have a negotiation about where they need to work, and if the employer doesn't have a reason to require people to come into the work, then they're not allowed to. So the workplace laws actually evolved, and I think will continue to evolve. So there's a kind of a requirement, like an unfair dismissal. You can't dismiss someone capriciously. You have to have a real reason, and the same with refusing work from home. You have to have a real reason, which is fine if you do have one. It just shows the different kind of attitudes that people have, and now the attitudes that the law has towards that kind of behaviour. But I think on the question of work, attracting good people, what do you need to be a good place to work? What does that mean? I think to some extent it means you need not just need to be a good place to work, but you need to be a place where people can do good work. You want a place where people can do interesting stuff that they find sort of meaningful, or that they at least maybe not meaningful, well, hopefully meaningful, but if not meaningful, then at least that they feel challenged and rewarded and valued and all of that. Which
but
is
also your culture.
Yeah.
Inside your business. And this is a challenge because, a lot of the time the culture of your business was bringing your people together. But you can have these huge global businesses, but even someone that may only operate out of, say, Melbourne, as you and I are both in Melbourne, but you could have, people of your team all the way up the eastern seaboard, up through to Asia, because the time zone is kind of there, that you can still have, a really good culture inside this business, and people love it. I mean, there's lots of people that have started businesses, or they've moved from where they were and they're living in Bali or Queensland or wherever, and they function exceptionally well with the way that they need to do stuff. I think part of it is just the acceptance and acknowledgement that people don't have to physically come into a space to do the work, that if there's a way to measure it, that it's getting done along the way. I think that'll be one of the big strategies for business owners over this year is, how are we going to embrace the level and maintain the flexibility that people are looking for? Because, employees, if they're not getting it, they'll go, you know what, no problem, I'll go find something else. And if they're a good employee, you're like, I don't really want to lose them.
Yeah.
So you kind of so you've got to work out how do you embrace it.
Yeah,
well, I think that's going to be a challenge.
The post-pandemic world certainly, I think, is one of if not labour shortages, perhaps talent shortages. So, if you've got good talent, you want to keep it, and if work from home is something that they want, then you've got to offer that, and you've got to, But I think at the same time, you can work them hard. People like to work hard. People can work hard as long as they're getting the support they need to achieve good things. And I think self-esteem and a sense of worth is built by achieving hard things. So you don't need to make have your people sitting on the couch at home working from home. They can work hard and they can have performance measures and all of that. But I think that needs to be against a backdrop of being kind of flexible and of valuing what they do and their contribution, and being kind of open-minded about how they can make that contribution.
True. And then just a quick question. So if you've got people working from home, is there then, from a legal point of view, an obligation of the employer to ensure that they have a safe, like a chair or a desk or maybe this is a separate topic, but I do think, it was kind of, people have got stuff, and then all of a sudden, you see people they're working an 8-hour day stuck over a laptop, and it's like, is that like, if they were in the office, would they have a laptop, or would you have them on a desktop computer?
If work from home is part of is one of your workplaces, if they are working from home, then yes, you do. I think and there'll be, I think there's a burgeoning industry in doing workplace health checks at home, and I know for our business, for what it's worth, everyone who's working from home gets bought an office chair and a stand-up desk if they want a stand-up desk, or and a separate screen and all that stuff. So that the same sort of rules for sitting at your desk you would have at the office, you should have at home. You can't stop if they go into the kitchen, make themselves a cup of tea, and drop the kettle on their toe. You can't stop them doing that. That's not a workplace injury. But if they're sitting at their desk and they get a sore back or whatever that is, and certainly you're obliged to make sure they've got a safe workplace. But there is a bit of grey in that in terms of, where's their work? If they're working on the couch, but that's not their work, they should be in their office. And frankly, I don't actually know the answer to that, and I'm not sure if there is a legal one. But it is something that the employer should turn their mind to, and they can't just say, you wanted to work from home, so it's your problem. That's not good enough.
Yeah, right. I think that'll be an interesting space too, because it sort of balloons out. But So do you guys keep it? No one has a desk in the office anymore? You've got a hot desk? But
yeah, there are hot desks in the office, that's right. So you can go in and use a hot desk anytime you want, and you can go in as much or as little as you want. You can go every day if you want to, or never.
Yep.
And then everyone has their own desk, which is, I mean, it's tourist property, and if they finished up, then they'd have to give their desk back. That would be theirs. But then we have fixed, Zoom meetings and then fixed in-person meetings. So you obviously have to attend the in-person meetings, but they're all really, because we're only a small team, they're all negotiated at times that suit everyone. We don't sort of say, okay, on Thursdays everyone has to be in the office. We just say, okay, well, we're going to do our team meeting on this day. Does that suit everyone? And we're all in person for that.
Yeah, right.
So that, and we're still adjusting and learning. I think over time you go, okay, well, that kind of worked. We had a period where we opened up our screens and we worked together just to, chat office chit chat. We thought, kind of simulate the work environment, but we found that was really weird. People are just like looking at, you sort of walk into your study and you're like, there's
your team. Jesus, what are you doing? Don't do that.
It's a bit sort of weird and kind of creepy. So we stopped that. But that was we're experimenting, thinking, well, normally we have chit chat around the office. Quite enjoy that, and maybe and especially to your point earlier about the junior lawyer, we thought, well, if the junior lawyer wants to sing out and they've got a question or they want to listen to us on the phone, they'll be able to do that virtually. And this was during COVID when we weren't allowed to go in the office.
Yep.
And I think it sounded like a good idea, but it just didn't kind of work. So I think you do experiment, you work what works for you and your team to get everybody sort of participating and feeling like they're part of.
And I think that's where
Friday meeting, and then we go out for a drink afterwards or whatever to try have a little bit of togetherness.
Yeah, and I do think some of it will be with some of the younger, as you're learning on your way through that, the person that's the tier above who's perhaps bringing a new person through just may have to then say, well, look, I'm on a call for so-and-so, and you set it as a Zoom or a conference or a Teams call, and they kind of go, well, look, this is one of the team, and it can be part of your handover. It's like, well, I always want Alex in the discussion with the three of us, so then, the more senior may have the strategy side, but then, Alex picks up all the grunt work afterwards and picks it up through that way, and then the client can get handed over and you move on to it. So I do think, it's going to evolve over time.
Yeah.
Like it'll just be interesting.
Yeah. I mean, that's the post-pandemic world, I think, is still evolving. Yep. But I think we have learned a whole lot of there's been a lot of positives to all of this.
Yeah, I agree.
Help open our mind to new things. I think now if someone said, you can't run a business like X or Y, I'd be much less likely to jump on that bandwagon because I had all these sort of fixed views based on my experience in business, and now my experience is broader, and I think, you could do it that way.
Yeah,
you could work from home and be flexible, and we've really embraced that with both hands.
Yep.
And we go and see our clients out at site, but they don't come to us.
And I think that's a big difference too. All of a sudden it's like you're still out and about. It's just that you're not actually coming out to a site and then back into the city and then back out again. It just depends on where you're sitting.
Yeah. A lot less time sitting in traffic anyway.
Who needs that? So anything else you want to do as we close out the episode for today?
I'd just say to keep an open mind to pick up the advantages of all this. There has certainly been some challenges, no doubt about it. The post-pandemic world is full of some doom and gloom, and it has been a hard time. And I think you've got to be, acknowledge that and be nice to yourself about it. Give yourself some look after yourself because it has been a hard time for a lot of people, for everyone really. But keep an open mind about the upsides and what you can take advantage of because the rules really for a strong business have been the same before the pandemic. And run your cash flow well. Look after your customers. Keep your staff happy and engaged. All of those things haven't changed, but perhaps the technology and the
way that you do it. Yes, and be open to new ideas and new processes and approaches.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Alex, once again, as we close out the conversation for today, I'd like to thank you. So Alex from Taurus Legal Management, and he can be contacted via LinkedIn at Alex Marson or via the website tauruslawyers.com. I would also like to thank myself, David Murdoch, the wealth activist from Paxton Bridge. I can also be contacted on LinkedIn at David Murdoch or via our website, paxtonbridge.com. So thank you once again, Alex. Always a fountain of knowledge. And we shall see you next time.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Dave. See ya.